to a guided meditation. We'll start with 3 sounds of the bell. So just be comfortable where you are. Just come back to your in-breath and your out-breath. In. I know that I am breathing in. Breathing out. I know that I am breathing out. In, out. Breathing in, my breath grows deep. Breathing out, my breath goes slowly. Deep, slow. Breathing in, I am aware of my body. Breathing out, I relax my body. My body, relax. Breathing in, I smile to my body. Breathing out, I feel ease in my body. Smile, ease. Breathing in, I am aware of my stable posture. Breathing out, I enjoy the stability. Stable posture, enjoying. Breathing in, I feel joy. Breathing out, I enjoy peace and happiness. Joy, peace and happiness. Breathing in, I dwell in the present moment. Breathing out, it is a wonderful moment. Present moment, wonderful moment. So thank you, dear friends. Please perhaps just have a little shuffle if you need to move. And I'd like to invite Teri, please, to speak first.
Thank you very much, Angie. Dear Ty, dear community, we are going to record the talks but Anna will pinpoint or spotlight the speaker, so you don't have to worry about being recorded if you're a member of the gallery. And it's so nice to see so many people here. And the theme for the morning is community, togetherness, and Sangha. And I belong to a very small community of people beings that go out for a walk every morning, 3 two-legged and 3 four-legged. And this morning I said I can't come for the whole walk because I have something to do that I need to get back to. What is it you're going to do? I have to give a talk. And what are you going to give a talk on? Togetherness, Sangha, community. I thought I might start with the fact that we came from the stars, and that was immediately shouted down. Well, they haven't proved that, I said something about DNA having come from the scientists, the first scientists, the people I go out walking with. And as a storyteller, every single creation myth says that we began in the stars. So when I woke up this morning, there was a line from a poem in my mind. I let the elves, I'm a storyteller, I let the elves do the work while the shoemaker sleeps. And in my mind this morning was a wonderful poem called New Year's Chimes by Francis Thompson. And I used it in a performance once because it says, "What is the song the stars sing? A million songs are as a song of one." And so I'm going to, because I know that the scientists have found the building blocks of DNA in meteorites, then I'm going to just guess that they're going to find out one day that actually we did come from the stars. And so that's our first community, is the stars, which is, to me, is a wonderful thing to contemplate. And in our practice, we are aware that our inner community, the community we carry within us, given to us by our parents, ancestors, going back way, it is the basis of who we are. And I think well, I know it's a need in every human being to belong, to feel they have a place. We're born into a family. That's our first community. We don't have any choice about that. Although some would say we do. Steiner believes that that we actually choose our family somewhere out there. And then we move on, when we're at a little bit older, I realized why I had a bit of suffering in me about being left out all the time and not fitting in, was because my family moved every 2 years due to my father's job as a village policeman, excuse me. And it took me till I was quite old to realize why I had that deep pain in me when I saw people talking about something, and I thought, why aren't they telling me what's going on? So it was very healing to realize that my upbringing had kind of left something in me. Every 2 years, we had to fit ourselves into a new community, and rural children probably, born and stay in that community. So they would always have known each other very well. So my brother and I were always outsiders. So then in teenage, you want to find a tribe to belong to, and it's usually dependent on music, clothes, that kind of thing. Then we look for a tribe to belong to. And later on, we find a community in maybe what job we're doing, what work we're doing, or our home circumstances. Like my community when I was in my early 20s was mostly single parents. So we kind of just fall into that. But I do believe that as well as the very basic needs for every living being, food, warmth, water, shelter, is something else, and that's belonging, care from other beings. Trees look after each other. They've just found out that now, that in a forest, if one tree is ill, the other trees, and especially the mother tree, there has to be a mother tree apparently, will send extra nutrients to the tree that's suffering. And the other thing I learned recently, if the scientists can be believed, and of course there will always be some that say that, well, that's only what they think or what the data tells them, is that even the trees communicate by way of mycelia, fungus. So there's this wonderful, wonderful network of different communities. And I usually start, and I intended to today until my dog walking friend said that's nonsense, with actually looking at the word that we're talking about, that we're basing our talk on. So the word community to me is really interesting. It starts with communitas, Latin, meaning the same. And then there's also, it comes from communis, public, shared by all or many. And the most interesting thing to me when I started looking at that word was a kind of extra bit of derivation, which is where we get the term municipality from. And I thought that's very much like our own community. And a municipality is a city which has autonomy over some governance, but is still reliant on a national government. And I started thinking about that's very much like, because I don't see our community as a kind of hierarchical community, which is surprising to some people, but I think my mind works a bit differently. I've never felt that. That there's the community of the OI, there's the community of trustees, there's a community of Dharma teachers, there's a little community of, big community of a Sangha, and then there's a community of Sangha attenders, and then there's the trustees, they're another little community, and they all have their own circle of how they look after each other. But what is there what is it that they're all reliant on? And what they're reliant on, as far as I could understand it, is the practice, which has been handed down to us from goodness knows when, the great beings, the Buddha, the previous Buddhas, and all the rest of them that are there behind. Thank you, Angie. I can see you're inviting the bell. That's brilliant. I'm so glad. And I was going to say a little bit about the 6 harmonies, which is a practice, a teaching that Tai gave about what makes a community successful. And they're find-outable, and we can put them in a follow-up. And we can also add the full poem from which the Song of the Stars came from for your interest. And I will say that harmony doesn't mean everybody singing the same song. It means people singing singing different songs, but making a whole. So I'm going to bow out because that means I've got a few seconds left to bow out with, and say how interesting it is to be on the other side of the host window for a change, and deeply grateful for everybody for being here and giving us a good listening to. Bowing out. I'd like to invite Miles to the microphone now, please.
Dear respected Thai, dear friends, good morning. It's very good to be with you. Thank you for this wonderful invitation to be here this morning. Community and togetherness and Sangha. A prompt we were offered at the beginning was an example of how Plum Village practice sustains and nourishes our own lives. And for me, that was a wonderful question. In the 1980s, I lived in the state of Oklahoma, right in the middle of the USA, and I was quite young, married with a child, and life was challenging. And someone handed me a book by Thai, and it immediately made sense to me. And I read it, and I tried to put the teachings in the book into practice. And they were immensely helpful. Sometimes I think almost they saved my life there when I was so far from home. They helped me and they helped my relations with others and my family. However, I had a wonderful but interesting experience of reading Thai for 10, 12, 14 years before I heard Thai's voice, because there was no YouTube. CDs were around, but they were very expensive. And when I came back to England around the year 2000, I heard Thai's voice for the first time. It was wonderful. I was very, very surprised. This is very different from the voice that I had imagined in my head. And after I'd been in London for a year or two, I thought, time to find a place to practice. And then I went to the Heart of London Sangha, where I've been for around 20 years now. And I found this very, very interesting, because what happened in terms of community was it put my practice into a different dimension. There was a community where everyone who came was accepted, and there was a kind of friendship that we offered one another. But it was a very interesting form of friendship, like friendship in daily life, and also with some other wonderful additional parts to it. I think the community I found there was accepting. And then as you spend time in the community, something more subtle happens. A friend in the Heart of London Sangha calls it resonance with one another. We listen to each other's stories in our tradition through Dharma sharing, and other people's stories resonate within us. We sit together and there's a resonance there. And out of that practice comes a kind of a trust, which leads to the possibility of reliance on one another. And I think this is a very wonderful kind of friendship. And in terms of how this friendship, this community would benefit the UK, having a centre here, I think one of the things that's very interesting when we've been practicing for a little while is that we intuitively begin to recognize practice in other people. So, for example, if we go away on a retreat in the UK, this is my experience, dear friends, or if I go to Plum Village, we recognize practice in one another. And even if we haven't really met people before, or if we don't know them very well, there's still a shared way of being, almost like a language shared without words. And when I think of how we have so many sanghas in the UK, and then, each year we might have a retreat together, which some people can get to. And then once a year or once every 3, 4, 5 years, we manage to make it to Plum Village. I think the possibility of having a practice centre in the UK where we might all be able to afford to go and have the time to go more regularly, to be together, to practice together, be a very wonderful thing. And being on the steering group, one thing that's very interesting is that I work on the people and program work streams, it's called. We know that for the resident team and the support Sangha, the key characteristic we're looking for is stable practice, freshness, and joy, so that at the center we can be generating practice energy. We can figure out the plumbing and the gardening and the cooking, but it's that stability that we want. And so it will become a place for families, individuals, sanghas to come together and be together. I'm very convinced that it's something I'd like to support, and it's got benefits for us, but also for the wider community. And there's lots of ways to talk about that. But very briefly, I'd mention my work with schools, which Angie talked about in the introduction. I've been fortunate to be in several big educators' retreats, which Thai led community, hundreds of teachers, and to have worked with teachers in 10s and 20s, practicing together so teachers can be stable. Seen how transformative for young people mindfulness can be in the classroom. You can, in a difficult world full of mental crisis for young people, that stability is the rediscovery of something that we have naturally within ourselves. And a center could help this come to light. Because I taught in an international school for the last 20 years, I was fortunate I could take kids on trips, and I took kids a number of times to Plum Village, and I've seen kids in our modern society, social media driven, put down those things, learn to be together again. And it sounds like learning, but it's actually rediscovering something that they knew all along. So you can take 30 kids, 14 to 18, who are all kind of a little bit with each other at the beginning. And then because they absorb things like sponges, after 3.5 days, telling me it's time to stop. After 3.5 days, they're back together again and they go home with a sense of wholeness. So I think there are many ways in which the center can help us beyond our own community, can help us with outreach, enormous possibilities, ecological prisons, police work, refugees, schools, people of all ages, those that are dying. There are all sorts of wonderful possibilities for what our community could do. So, dear friends, my thinking about community at the moment, and I really thank you for the opportunity to share that with you this morning. Miles, bowing out.
Thank you, Miles. You did have a few seconds more. But anyway, so I'd like now to invite Tasman, please.
Dear Thai, dear friends, my name is Tamsin, and I'm very glad to be here with you all today. I'm one of the relatively new members of the Sangha in the UK. I came to London so that I could work at Tate in 2019, and I was living in Brixton, where I still live. And I was a curator of the live program, which is performance-based. We were due to open an exhibition of live performance 2 days after we had to close our doors. And it was quite a terrifying experience. My housemates left and I was alone in my flat in Brixton. And at the time, our borough was one of the worst affected in the UK. So every day I was seeing ambulances and horse-drawn hearses going past with the names of people's grandmothers, grandfathers, their parents. It was quite an intense experience for me. And it just so happened that I'd been working with a practicing Buddhist, an artist named Li Ming Wei, and he had and has such a beautiful energy. I was drawn to him, and I asked him about that before the pandemic hit, and he explained that he meditated every day. So when this very intense pandemic hit and Australia and New Zealand were closing their borders so that we couldn't return, as it transpired, for another 2 or 3 years, and I was completely cut off from my community, I just sat there and I meditated. And I did that every morning for, I think, about 14 days. There was this online YouTube driven guided meditation that you could follow, and then you're invited to diarize your thoughts afterwards. And the experience was so incredibly profound, um, that I told quite a few people about it, including my mother, who claims to be a Buddhist, but I've never seen her meditate in my life. And she told me about this lovely Vietnamese chap, and she couldn't remember his name, but she sent me a photograph in the days afterwards, and it was The Miracle of Mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh. And so that led me to discover that the London-based Sanghas had gone online. And so I did a bit of Sangha shopping. I was really excited about meditating with other people. And I discovered the Colors of Compassion Sangha. There was such a joy and warmth to the Colors of Compassion online Sangha. So it's actually quite nice to be back here, because this was the beginning of my experience of being with the Plum Village tradition, was in a Zoom room. So I feel like this is a little bit of that now. And so I meditated with them for about a year or so, maybe 2 years actually, before I discovered that Heart of London and Wake Up had been meeting in person again. And I was really excited about the idea of meeting people, because I realized, as wonderful as it was to gather online, there's something really important about those interstitial spaces where nothing is guided, and you're together in the tea room or in the park, as it often was for Wake Up. And that was where you could discuss life and how your practice intersects with your life. That was the thing that I was really curious about. Was I was struggling with the 5 mindfulness trainings that were being read out at every meetup, and I had questions and I wanted to know how other people were going. And I found it really helpful to meet with people in person and have those conversations. That was really wonderful, and friendships developed there. I was starting to realize that the longer I was with the Sangha, the more I was shifting away from the kind of lifestyle that I'd previously had. I was just kind of naturally moving in that direction as it was. And so it was really great meeting other vegans and people who are meditating every day. And I found it very inspiring and very helpful to my practice to be able to have a conversation with friends in the Sangha. And I think this is really amplified at the retreats that we have. And that was where I met Teri at the last New Year's retreat. It was wonderful. I was one of the facilitators for the family groups, and I wondered how a retreat might be if I was so actively involved. Would I be able to enjoy the retreat and actually experience the full power of the retreat if I was also focused on organizing people and the administration of that? And actually, what I found was that I was so deeply, deeply moved by the generosity of the community. That is something that is so powerful that no other retreat had really done that for me, of the same incredible, humbling experience. Except actually, the one other example would be when I was completely by myself, and my first experience of meditating every day. These two experiences could not be more different, but they were both equally powerful and showed me what it was to touch peace. And the reason why I bring up the New Year's retreat is because seeing all these people offer their gifts, whether it was a medical doctor we have in Colors of Compassion dealing with an emergency, or people offering their musical gifts, their organizational gifts, whatever they had, everyone was chipping in. And there is an incredible power to that, because this was not about a transaction. This was not the sort of relationships that we often have in London and places where we often feel alienated. This was incredible generosity. And I think for me, the reason why that was so moving was because it was the knowledge that everyone was sharing their gifts. And I feel very strongly that if we were to have a UK-based centre, these sorts of experiences would be more accessible to all sorts of groups, and not just at New Year's, and not just when monastics come in, but in all sorts of different ways. I can see, Angie, you've got that ready, but you're on mute. So have I got 1 more minute? 1 more minute, great. So how I envisage this peace centre in the UK that Ty envisaged is a bit like this morning, the way in which we've all gathered. But there is something very important about being in person, about sharing silence, sitting alongside each other, sharing our gifts, but also really important to share our suffering. Sometimes suffering can be so profound in the way that it's shared in a group, but also when it's shared one-on-one under a tree, going for a walk. These are the accidental ways in which we connect with people, and it's the unscheduled ways in which we relate to each other that creates the most powerful moments of connection. And I feel that this is a very important part of what we're doing in the UK. And so to be able to have somewhere that we can return to, that's our own home, that we don't have to get on a plane or Eurostar to, would be a real benefit to everyone here. So I'm going to bow out, and I'm passing on to Nick after Angie brings in the bell. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tamsin.
Morning, dear Thai, dear community. So this is Nick bowing in from Plum Village, France. And I'm calling in from New Hamlet, where there is no Wi-Fi. But because this is a community, the sisters have run around and found cables and laptops and things to help me to connect this morning to be with you all, because the whole Sangha is in New Hamlet today. So I've already had a very strong experience of community support this morning. And my journey I want to share around community this morning goes back to 15 years ago, when I was based in the Middle East and I was working on the conflict in Iraq. And in that time, the problems in community, both internationally and locally and across so many areas, I think we can say things had gone so badly wrong by that stage. And my work was to try to find ways to develop reconciliation, to involve people in a process that did not have to be so violent. And it was very, very challenging work. And it was a year or so after I finished my work on the Iraq War that I did my first retreat with Thai and the monastics in the UK. And it was very clear to me on that retreat that I could not follow my own spiritual path in life on my own. I needed to be with other people, other practitioners, and that it was just so much more rewarding to do things as a community, to do things as a group. So after that retreat, a few of us gathered together and we set up Wake Up London with the very strong support to the heart of London, because there was a community already there that could hold us as we were developing. And over the following several years, it was one of the most meaningful things in my life to support the growth of Wake Up London. And then as a therapist, working in the NHS with people who had chronic physical and mental health difficulties, building community there and running groups in such a way that people had a chance to share and connect. And we'd give them vouchers to go to the cafe after the group, partly with the aim that at one point someone could say, you know, we could just keep meeting. We don't need therapists because we understand each other. And from that, the people in the group were able to build their own community that's continued. And throughout the pandemic, they would continue to meet with each other and support each other. And in the group, often we would hear people say, I think I'm only still here because of this group and because of community. And then a few years later, I had my own direct experience of that 3 years ago when I suffered my own breakdown with a psychosis and was put in hospital with a full psychotic breakdown, and had a very long journey of recovery after that, where for a time I'd lost my ability to function, to work. Even my memory wasn't working so well for a time, and I couldn't regulate my emotions. But by this time, I was so much held in community that after several months of recovering slowly in the UK, I came out to Plum Village and I spent a year working on the Happy Farm here. And I put down all the intellectual, busy work, projects, professional activity, and I spent a year growing vegetables on the team in the Happy Farm and slowly recovering my capacity. And that really opened the door for me of what it felt like to be accepted by community, even when I felt that I couldn't offer anything, and to understand a little bit more what unconditional love and unconditional acceptance could feel like. Because at that time, I didn't value the contribution that I thought I could make to the community or the world, because I was in such a broken down state. But by being able to just follow a schedule out in Plum Village, to be able to work on the land and to be part of a community of practice, very slowly my mind could recover and rebuild, and then gradually play more of a role again in facilitating and projects, and helping to contribute to the community here to grow. And now I have the chance to be involved in many interesting projects within the Plum Village community, including around safeguarding and education. And I would say for me, the most exciting project I'm now involved in is joining this team to see how we can bring this vision of a UK practice centre to fruition. And this is such an exciting year to be a part of it, where it seems so many conditions are coming together and so much support is coming in. My wish is to carry on seeing how we can build communities to make them ever stronger, ever more inclusive, ever more supportive, and how beautiful it would be to see that flourish in the UK. I found the more that I have steered my life towards community, the more community has supported me. And for myself, I wish to keep going in that direction. It's the most meaningful and the most joyful, and certainly a journey of infinite learning. It can be challenging living in community, but the rewards have just been immense. And I don't think I would be here without community. So I'm enjoying putting in what I can to make that community available to other people. So I shall pause my sharing there, I think, and hand back to Angie. Thank you for being here and for listening.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you everybody else. We'll just have a sound of the bell. So, dear friends, dear Sangha, we have time now for some questions and answers to the panel, or anybody else who has a question. We've got about 10 minutes before we go to our break. So please, if you have a question, perhaps if you'd like to put your hand up or wave your hand or even put it in the chat. We will endeavour to get some answers for you. And of course, if you have a question, you need to unmute yourself. Well, you're all very quiet this morning.
Angie and Anna, I think we need to have gallery view now so that we can see. All I can see is Angie at the moment. I think she's still pinned or spotlighted or something.
I've got gallery view, but
Oh, I don't. Okay, well that's good. If
press
everybody
the button. Have you?
just continue then. If I'm needed to answer a question, somebody can tell me.
I can't see any questions up to now. Nancy Fox to everyone. Nancy, just a minute. I just need to find your question. Put my glasses on because I'm.
I haven't actually typed it, Angie.
Oh, right, Nancy, go for it then, please. Where are you?
It's
Anna,
very.
perhaps you could spotlight Nancy.
Oh God. I do.
Okay, Nancy.
Well, it's very mundane. I'm sorry. And thank you so much for all beautiful sharings. It's just beautiful listening to everybody and very encouraging. And it looks like a fantastic team. So thank you all very much. Can I just ask? I was led to believe that at one point you were looking for a mortgage, that there was going to be a mortgage needed. Can I ask if that's still the case and what's the progress on that, if any, please?
Thank you, Nancy. I don't know whether anybody here. Oh, Nick. Thanks, Nick.
Hi, yes, I can say some words on that. Yes, that was originally part of the thinking, but since then there's been quite a strong increase in support, and we're now anticipating that we may get to a position where we can buy somewhere without a mortgage, but we will likely also be looking for friendly loans as part of the overall way that we finance. But there's been a lot of support come in the last 3 months, and I think to have the centre on a really stable, sustainable footing for the long term, we're looking to see if we can purchase debt-free or very close to debt-free. Yes, but there'll still be further months to develop this. Yeah, thank you for your question, and do contact the project team directly at any point as well if you want to know more about that. Nick Barrier.
Thank you, Nick. I did see somebody else with their hand up, but they disappeared, or the hands disappeared. No more questions? Bob. Yes, Bob.
Yeah, that was I really appreciated those presentations. They were very moving. The last time I interacted with the Being Peace Centre program, there were two possibilities. I just wonder if we've moved from that position.
Miles and Nick, but Miles, you're muted. No.
Thank you, Bob, for that question. Yeah, we are moving from that possibility because, as we explained in our last of these Sunday evening meetings that we have twice a month, we now have the intention of the monastics, the aspiration for the monastics in Plum Village to be with us 3 months of the year, likely March, April, and May to fit their calendar. And that's leading us to, with their encouragement and support, look for somewhere that may have more capacity than the two places we've been looking at in Derbyshire. We were looking at Bamford, which has been run by the Quakers, and Glenbrook close by, which is a Girl Guide place, both of which are being sold. I think although our property search is open, we're looking at the middle of England. But as Nick said, fundraising is encouraging at the moment. The monastics would like us to have a centre with bigger capacity. We had been working on the idea of 35 to 50 beds, which would be our standard capacity, plus camping when we could have big events in the summer and expand forever. And I think we're now looking towards or exploring ideas of about 80, 90 plus. It's true that for the 9 months of the year, the centre would still run probably with sangers coming together and in groups of 30 or 40. But we think, or even 20s, we think it's manageable. And we've got lots of details about this. That again, as Nick says, if you like to contact the team, we welcome thinking. But we've been thinking very hard about this, Bob. So thank you. So bowing out.
So thank you, Miles. And there is a question in the chat.
There is a hand raised from Gideon, Angie. Also.
Sorry, Anna.
Gideon has his hand raised.
Yeah, okay, so I'm just going to read this one in the chat and then we'll go to Gideon. And the one in the chat is, what about conflict in community, especially in diverse multicultural societies? I notice a lot of conflict avoidance in spiritual communities that value peace. Teri, I think you might like to answer that.
I'm also happy to chip in.
Thank you. I will just simply say that we have some wonderful tools for practice from Thai, which are designed to address conflict, either in a small scale between two people or larger scale. And I think also that every conflict will have a different way to resolve it. But certainly one of the things that's kept me in this community is the fact that 2 or 3 practices that Thai has left us with are directly aimed at resolving conflicts, especially because we're looking at having a residential community at the centre. They will need to be able to use those tools to maintain harmony. And then I would like to give Tamsin a chance to answer that as well. And then we might need to invite you to send any further questions into our email address that I put in the chat for everyone to see. Bowing out.
So Tamsin, please.
Tamsin bowing in. Yeah, it's a really important question, Janice. Thank you so much for asking it. Part of the reason why Colours of Compassion exists, it has to be said, is because it is a safe space for people of colour. And it's such a successful Sangha that we have people as far west as Hawaii and as far east as Philippines and Australia, joining this huge Sangha that's meant to be rooted in London. And so we will continue online to make sure we have space for our friends across the globe, as well as meeting in person now. But it is one of the things that unfortunately regularly is shared, is that even in a peace-loving community as this one, is that people do feel the tang of racism as it exists in the world, even though I truly believe this is an amazing Sangha of very generous people. We come to the Sangha with our pre-existing prejudices and ignorances, and that's all of us. It's myself included. And I think exactly what Teri has said, that there are some really important tools that support us in being able to address these issues head on. I'm someone who is not conflict avoidant, and I find that as an Australian that can be quite jarring for I would say people who are raised in the UK. And I have to be quite mindful of that, I'm quite confident being direct and saying, hey, look, this didn't land well with me, but I have to be aware of that someone else might find that incredibly confronting. The flip side of that is that it means you can get to the heart of the issue a bit faster. But I think you're right about just raising some awareness of, when we are advocating for peace and we are practicing peace, how do we address issues head on? I've definitely found that beginning anew has worked wonders for me. And also having, as I mentioned before in my sharing, that having those spaces that are not formal, to be able to sit down and have a cup of tea with someone, knowing who your friends are in those spaces becomes really critical to supporting the practice. Like when I've had a misunderstanding with someone, what's been important is not only the beginning a new practice, but also the friends around us who want to support our continued relationship building, and who've advised and helped us navigate that. It's really important to be able to have that as a community, to be able to have everyone supporting that understanding. And I found in myself as an individual, it then allows me to deepen my practice, to grow as a person, and to better understand my friend in the community. And there's so much more that can be said about that, but I'm just using that as an example, as someone who is on the receiving end of some of these questions around diversity. So thank you so much, Janice.
So thank you, Tamsin. I shall get it right one day. Thank you, Tamsin and Teri. And thank you all for your questions. If there are more questions, please put them into the chat, and you will get an answer from one of the members of the team. So now we can come along to have maybe a 5-minute break before we go in. Before we go into Dharma sharing rooms. And please remember to, if you're not going to join the Dharma sharing groups, please remember to log out of this morning's session to help Anna, so she can put us all into rooms. Teri, did you want to say something, or have I said it?
We did say that we would answer Gideon's question, I think, but
he's put. Oh, Gideon. Okay.
Thank you, Angie. Thank you, Teri. It was a very general question. It's not needed for now. If the morning needs to move on, I will attend the next gathering. So thank you, Teri.
Gideon, put it in the chat, please.
No, it's okay.
Okay, so we'll listen to the sound of the bell, and perhaps you can go and get a hot drink or whatever it is your needs are for the moment. And thank you all so much for your questions, and thank you to the panel for your talks. They've been really great.